everybody. I'm here today with Angi Kane. She's the Chief Marketing Officer of Jolly's Mill Pond. Hi, Angi. Welcome to this week's Business Spotlight.
Hi, Kelly, and thank you for having me.
So let's get right to the questions.
Okay.
So tell me a little bit about Jolly's Mill Pond.
Jolly's Mill Pond is a 150-acre tree farm and pond located about 13 miles away from colonial Williamsburg in Virginia. My husband and I are the third generation of owners of this property, which is historic. And we have been discovering more and more depth to that history from early Virginia. There's a largely undiscovered Black history that we found connected to our property. We originally planned on, we moved down from from Brooklyn to Virginia, and we originally thought we could just kind of keep the property as is, as it's mostly off-grid. But over time, we discovered that we would definitely need to turn it into a business that protected the natural character and promoted the history of the property while still making it pay for itself.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. So how long have you been running it as a business like that?
Really, as a business for the past couple of years, because we had abnormal bureaucratic and logistical challenges with this property. It took a long time to get to the point where we could actually start working on the fun stuff, which is on the business development end of things. So we're still, I consider, in the early stages of growing it.
Okay. So who does it serve? I mean, what's your best customer, your target audience?
Well, to date, because it's a combination of mostly forested land and it has a 50-acre pond or a lake, our primary customers have been outdoorsmen. They've been duck hunters, they've been deer hunters, and they've been anglers. But our strongest customers with it in its very natural state, they've been waterfowl hunters.
Okay. Is there any tourist piece of that, or?
So our plan is to develop it as an agri-tourist destination that combines all of the best features of our property. Like I said, we have a largely unknown history. We have the natural environment. We are developing farm to table on the property, with farming being there for the first time since arguably the 1930s or so. So it is like a multifaceted agri-tourist destination. So we're phasing in those different tourism features.
Wow, that sounds really interesting. And I looked at your website and saw a little bit of that. It's pretty cool. It's almost like you're really trying to bring back the whole history of everything it was in the past,
or at least exposing people to different historical narratives and appreciating that. Because we've never had a standard run-of-the-mill farm property, it was really daunting. It was extremely overwhelming in the beginning to figure out how to make this work. And how do you highlight its uniqueness, but still start growing profitability. So we want people to be exposed to what it was, and then also what it can be in the future.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, having multiple streams of income, so to speak.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So you transitioned from Brooklyn down to Williamsburg area. Big transition. My fiance is actually from Brooklyn. So how's that been? Has that just been a great? I mean, there's a big difference there. So do you love it, or is it?
Well, when we moved, we were dealing with two different locations, Richmond, Virginia, and Williamsburg, Virginia. So we moved into my husband's childhood home, We had very young kids at the time, and there was just a lot going on, and especially dealing with the complexity of Jolly's Mill Pond. The transition was not seamless. I am a Brooklyn girl through and through. My children were both born in Brooklyn. I made sure that was going to happen. So the transition was challenging, but for reasons that I didn't expect. I started to learn that I think the networking and the business cultures in Virginia operate a little differently than they do in New York, in Brooklyn. And it really was important when I moved here to start networking in a way that was consistent with my personality. So I probably went through a million rubber chicken lunches to find like the networking groups that would work for me. But I really realized that it was extremely important to build social proof in whatever I did, and to have collaborations with people who could speak to who I was before I went in for the transaction. Before I went in to make other things happen. So that networking component became a huge deal, and it took me time to realize how important it was going to be in Virginia versus in Brooklyn.
That's a great point. So what's been, that's one issue to overcome. What's been some of the biggest issues you've had to overcome in the transition to this?
Well, one of the chief responsibilities with our property is the dam that impounds our 50-acre pond. That dam is an earthen dam that was built sometime in the late 1700s to early 1800s. And there was a public road that went over the dam, just like a standard country road. And this is a low hazard dam. It's not the Hoover Dam or anything like that. We have been mandated by the state's dam safety department to bring that dam into modern compliance. And that original figure for that cost was $3 million. Wow. With the public road open. With the road closed, that dropped to a discount deal of about $750,000. So when we moved, the dam was our biggest challenge. It was the biggest obstacle that we'd have to overcome. At the worst case scenario, the state could breach our dam, even though it's on private property, or the dam would breach on its own because it has needed repairs. It's 200 years old, but it's historically highly significant to our property because the dam was built by slaves in the late 1700s or early 1800s. It's a very strong piece of history, and it helps tell the story of our property. So our biggest challenge then and now is how we renovate or how we refurbish the dam while still protecting the key feature of our property. So I would say when we first moved and we were tackling the different elements with our property, one of the biggest things was how do we manage the dam and how do we not get the state to come after us? And but like I said, it is a low hazard dam. There's no threat to public safety or anything like that. It's a threat to the value of the property, and it's a threat to the history. So that's still a work in progress, but just getting over some of those initial challenges with the dam, with the road closure and all of those logistics and the public relations, et cetera, definitely the hugest thing, the hugest challenge that I had to deal with in this process.
Wow. Yeah. And it sounded like it was a little bit of a surprise that came to you too. It wasn't something you were anticipating at the beginning.
Well, we weren't expecting it to be as huge as it was.
Yeah.
The issue with the dam started with my father-in-law when he was alive, and he was able to work out certain agreements, et cetera, but then change of administration, et cetera. It was just something that we knew we would have to deal with. I definitely underestimated how challenging it was going to be.
Yeah. Wow. So what's been the biggest learning since you've started as a business owner?
Okay. It's hard to say that there was one thing because there have been a million lessons. I would say that the knowledge that business isn't just business. Business is personal. To achieve anything of substance, I think in the business world, there's a certain amount of personal development and personal growth that comes along with that. When you're raising the bar on what you can achieve on the business front, you have to believe that yourself as a person. But if you're setting business goals up here, but your sense of goal setting, personal goal settings down here, it doesn't match up.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have a certain amount of growth in order to tackle some of these challenges. At least that's been my experience. So yes, business is very much personal to me.
Yeah, that's man, that is such a good comment, because it is never just about a business with business owners. Number one, you know, it impacts their entire life in some way or another. And then we had a speaker at our global conference. One of the things he said, which is in line with what you just said, is you cannot go professionally where you're not willing to go personally. Right?
I like that.
You have to be able to do the same thing personally. So yes, that's great comment. So what have you learned about yourself during this journey?
I've learned that I can adapt to a lot of different situations. Even though I grew up in Brooklyn and everything, I've always enjoyed, I've enjoyed outdoor sports, outdoor activities, camping, etc. But moving here and tackling the challenges that I've had to, tackle, I learned through every challenge that I had the ability to adapt to the challenge. That really wasn't as much of a requirement when we were still in New York. There was adaptation that had to occur, but I realized as all of these different things were thrown at me, that were thrown at us, that I had the ability to adapt, kind of take the punch in the gut, catch my breath, take a moment, and then I was able to keep it moving.
Excellent. Yeah, that's the success of business owners, entrepreneurs, is that being able to adapt and innovate to keep going. You know, so many failures with a lot of business owners before they succeed. That's just the way it is. And if you give,
yes,
right,
absolutely.
So, what advice would you give to anyone thinking of going into business?
I think while you have to dream, because what's the point of doing anything like launching a business if you can't dream? But you have to also be able to connect that dream to your circumstances, to where you currently are. So for instance, I am producing a podcast for landowners called the Raw Land Startup. And it really is about people being able to start with what they have and build from there. So I think you absolutely need to dream, but you also have to be tethered to your reality so that you chart the appropriate course for yourself. And that may not be identical to someone else's. I didn't know anyone who was walking through the circumstances that we've had to walk through. And it wasn't going to do me any good that, I heard about how someone else was able to have a runaway success with their property when they weren't dealing with my realities.
Right.
So you have to understand where you are so that you can chart the right course for yourself to get to where you want to be.
Yeah, that's really great insight, Angie. I wanted to mention, I didn't want to finish the interview without mentioning that you're an Emmy award-winning producer, and the Emmy's sitting there back on your mantle, I see.
Oh, no,
that's pretty awesome. So it was a documentary. You just want to touch on that for a second?
Yes, I was an associate producer on a documentary called Heard, as in People Want to Be Heard. It was a PBS documentary that was seen in 70% of the households, PBS households across the country. Heard shared the stories of former and current residents of Richmond's housing projects. So we had a small, scrappy team, and we were very focused on having people share their stories versus our telling their stories. And it really flips this notion of what you see portrayed about the projects on the 6 o'clock news.
Yeah.
And I think, not to pat ourselves on the back or anything, I think it did a lot to show the humanity of people who are just in different circumstances.
Yeah.
So that's what we won the Emmy for.
Well, congratulations. That's
awesome.
Thank you. Not too many people you get to meet with that. So, so Angie, last question. Any offers to include in the newsletter?
Offers. Okay. What week? We're rolling out different products and services in the upcoming months on our property, including, and this is kind of a tongue-in-cheek thing, it's a series of in-person events called Man Camp, where white-collar professionals can come to our property and learn more traditional skills. It's basically, it's run by my husband, and it's basically about healthy male fellowship and people learning how to, for instance, fell a tree and mill it and build live edge slabs, etc., cook around a campfire, that sort of thing. So for any of your coaches who are in the region and want to travel to Williamsburg, Virginia, they can get 10, well, I was going to say 10% off. Let's make it 20% off for any of your coaches who are registering for Man Camp. And I can share the Eventbrite link with you so that you can share it to your network.
Yeah, that'd be awesome, Angie. Well, thank you very much for that. Well, that wraps up the interview. Great job. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much.